have an agenda to adopt. We have a motion for the agenda. Motion from Joe.
Second.
Second from Karen. Please vote. The agenda is adopted 4-0. 6A is a report out of closed session, however, we do not have a report out of closed session this evening. Turning to 7A, which is information discussion regarding the sixth grade camp review. The governing board has information that we're going to be sharing, and Jamie taking the lead on that?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So Dr. Miyashiro.
First, following up on a request from our board to request the guidelines around transgender policies, I spoke with Todd Tibbetts, CEO. He shared that those documents are internal, but he reiterated to me that the policies are to be inclusive, to use inclusive language. They use terminology that is gender neutral, like y'all, us, and coach. They refer to all of their counselors as coaches now, and that at no time are students asked to share more than that they want to share in expression, with pronouns, and that if any staff were to do anything that makes students feel uncomfortable, that would be all under disciplinary action.
For those of you who are wondering what we are talking about, an issue apparently arose at one of the YMCA camps that our sixth graders attend. And that issue came to our forefront, and we had to do an investigation. And we discussed with YMCA, and that's what our presentation is at this point moving forward, just so you're up to speed.
President Miller,
Yes.
Superintendent, I was able to find our promise to serve all transgender and non-binary guidelines in my computer. I had downloaded it when they were still public, if I may share with the board.
No, of course, I remember you commenting that it wasn't online all of a sudden.
Yes. Make sure. I probably have way too many copies here, but.
David, please continue.
Yeah, so I will share that we have a long-standing relationship with the YMCA. Todd Tibbetts took over as CEO just a few years ago, and it was right during the start of COVID when we were trying to reopen our campuses, and they allowed us to use their pools and extend our programs to their campuses when we're trying to spread out and social distance according to the very stringent county guidelines. And over the last few years, they've also provided childcare for our employees so that they could attend our all-employee welcome back breakfast and Thrive conference and such. So I have a very good relationship with Todd, and feel free to reach out to him. He said he'd be happy to answer questions for me, but also for the board at any time. And ask Pete Chotzko, immediately when we learned of concerns regarding sixth grade camp, we had our own internal investigation. And Pete, not only is he's the assistant principal, but oversees our sixth graders, and also spent the night at camp, I understand.
Not the night, that was there for a day.
Okay, the day.
Yeah.
Okay. So Pete, would you mind sharing with the board the processes that we took immediately returning from camp, and maybe start from coming off the buses and then a short survey?
Sure, thank you, Dr. Miyashiro, Board President Miller, and members of the board. My name is Pete Chotzko, and I'm one of the assistant principals at LCC. There you go, is that better? Okay. So, I'm happy to be here tonight and share with you the LCC investigation. And so I will start with, I did spend a day at camp, and so.
Mr. Tosco, that's Lowe's Coaches Creek?
Those Coaches Creek Middle School, yes ma'am. So I did get to spend a day at camp, and I got to see kind of firsthand what our students were doing and what they got to experience, and they were having a blast. They were running around in the field, they were building shelters in the woods, they were coming back from hikes, they were eating chili and cornbread and drinking bug juice. Yeah. And so they were having a good time. And so it was an honor for me to be able to go up there and see our kiddos and kind of see what they were doing. And then when they came back on Friday, albeit a little bit dirtier than they were when they went up on Monday, they came back all smiles and happy and it seemed like they had a great time. On Tuesday, the 17th of January, we had a PTA meeting, and it was at that PTA meeting where parents came and brought some concerns to the school. And we had parents that were very concerned with what we kind of organized into 5 main concerns. And on that day, we immediately started interviewing students of the parents that came in. And I had my first phone call with the camp director at Camp Marston on the 17th as well, to let them know that we received complaints from families and we're looking into it and we'll be following up with that as we go. So is it okay if I go through the 5 concerns? Okay. So the first concern that parents brought to our attention was the use of pronouns and the widespread use of pronouns by the YMCA staff while our students were at camp. And what was reported to us was that students in a group setting were asked to share their pronoun when they were introducing themselves. And based on YMCA policies, that seemed to go counter what the policies were. The YMCA policy was as a student-initiated discussion, not a staff-initiated discussion. That would be one-on-one to not put a student in an uncomfortable situation. So through our investigation, what we found out from the YMCA was that, in fact, yes, counselors went against the grain and invited students to share their pronouns when they introduced themselves. The counselors modeled it and said, please introduce yourself with your name, you're welcome to share your pronoun with us if you'd like to, and then your favorite, sometimes it was Mario Kart character, and sometimes it was food. And our students felt pressured at that moment. And so in my conversations with the YMCA, I let them know what happened and what was reported to us. They did their investigation and said, yep, it sounds like that did happen, and they corrected it immediately. They had a conversation with their staff, and like Dr. Mishiro said, we do not use pronouns. We have names like coach and y'all with us so that we don't have to bring that into the conversation on the Y's perspective. And they assured us that that would never happen again. Item 2 that parents were concerned about was that there was conversation with our students that when they were in their bunks and they were doing their introductions, staff members said, if you're in a bunk with a different gender than you identify as, let us know and we'll move you to another bunk. And the concern that parents brought to us was that they felt that the YMCA's policies said that they might move a student to a different bunk based on their gender preference and not tell the parents. And so the first thing the YMCA did was confirm that no one would move to bunks. That conversation never came up. And that they did also confirm that yes, if a student said, I identify as a female and have me in a male bunk, that they would accommodate them with the gender they identify as. And based on law, they are not allowed to tell the parents. The students have to give permission. It's the same laws that we follow as a school and school district. The third concern that families brought to us was that some camp staff shared their sexual orientation with students. Students reported that camp counselors said that they were homosexual and it was okay. And the YMCA did an investigation with their staff, and they said that they didn't find any evidence of those conversations happening between their staff and the students. They did say on an occasion that a student did come to a staff member and ask him a question and say that the student initiated it and said, I don't like boys, is that okay? And according to this YMCA report, the staff member said that's fine, and they left it as that. The fourth concern was that a student might have been patted down by a YMCA staff member while they were in bed. And this immediately raised the hairs on the back of my neck and triggered me to call the YMCA and say, I need you to know very much and quickly what I just heard and what's going on. This is the accusation that's come to me. I will let you know when I find out more, but this is what's happening. And in conversations with the student who made that comment, he said, yes, I did tell my friend in the conversation that I thought that happened, but I don't think it was an adult. I think it was another student in the cabin. And so I reiterated with the YMCA the importance of making sure that our students feel safe, but the student has since said that he made a mistake in the story. And then number 5, the YMCA staff was rude and yelled a lot at the kids was the last complaint that we got from parents. I personally did not see this when I was up at the YMCA for the camp day. When our staff was asked about this, they said they did not see it as rude or yelling, that our kids were very rambunctious. This is the first time that many of our students are away from home. And so they get excited and you're out in the woods, and sometimes you have to wrangle in 250 sixth graders and elevate your voice. Some students did say that they felt that they were unfairly punished because other students in their cabin or their bunks were misbehaving because they were all with the same counselor, that they then had to suffer the consequence of not going on the night hike or not participating in the skate. And those are the 5 concerns, Dr. Nishira, that families brought to our attention and our investigation.
Thank you for being here this evening, Pete.
Thank you, Pete, appreciate that.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
It was brought to my attention by a parent at Las Coaches Creek, because my kids go there, that there were written statements obtained from students. Are you able to share how many students shared written statements?
So I believe it's 9 students that shared written statements.
And were the parents, because this parent came to me and said, you know, I didn't know about it, that my kid was asked to give a written statement, what's the protocol when you call a student in to provide a written statement?
So my protocol is to always inform the parent of the statement, even if it's just your child is witness, and I have brought that out of their class and in my office today. With this circumstance, the majority of the time the parent was on the phone while I was talking to the student because it was such a big deal. And I definitely called all parents and let them know those statements.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board? No, thank you, Pete, appreciate it.
Oh, yes.
And we do have a speaker card. Sandy.
I'll start out with a couple of things. I'm really pleased last weeks ago, when people were doing everything they could, a number of people commented on wanting every bit of money possible to go to actually helping the children. In this case, I think the YMCA should have been checked out a whole lot better, because no child should ever be put through what some of those children were put through. The young man we spoke 2 weeks ago, also brought up a number of things about pronouns, and why is anyone even allowing this utter, total, complete nonsense to take place in any of the schools? It shouldn't happen, and it shouldn't be happening to anyone at the YMCA. This gentleman who just spoke said that some things will be stopped. I don't know. You need to be sure that they will be, or never send the children to a YMCA again unless you know, K-N-O-W, big capital letters, that such behavior, so-called pronouns, etc., will never be used. Coach and y'all is not acceptable. Mr., ma'am, sir, etc., is acceptable. In normal life, that was not normal behavior. Also, I'm not understanding why people have some, I'm sorry, David, but very good salaries, one of the top in the state, and wanting money some time ago for a car, and then sold that one, from what I understand, so different people have done different things, and then got no money. And if you've got a really good several $100,000.
Sandy, you need to keep your comments to the item agendized, otherwise it goes to general
Well,
public.
okay, I'll talk then again a little bit later.
If you fill out a separate card, absolutely.
No, I didn't. Okay, the short thing is that every bit of money possible needs to go toward the children and the school, and not toward excess things that people should be able to manage their own finances.
Thank you, Sandy. Moving on to item,
Is there a discussion after public
That
comment?
includes Tamara.
not generally, no.
I wanted to bring up, from this document, page 6 of the document, may I
So,
mention that?
not really, but, go ahead.
Okay, so page 6 of 7, I'll let you guys get there. arrival and during camp, the second bullet point says, counselors/leaders should intentionally use each person's pronoun shared with the group in front of other people to affirm how this person wants to be addressed. I think, particularly that part of the policy document, there's a lot more effect. It references in a couple places the glsen.org references in 2 places that resource for camp counselors who are educators, where they have a form that asks teachers to query students and campers about their pronouns. So it sounds like to me that the YMCA represented that, you know, these counselors kind of went rogue off of the policy, but perhaps the policy is a little bit unclear for these counselors. And I'll point to that second bullet point there, arrival and during camp.
I read that differently than you do, Anthony.
Okay.
I read that as that the counselors and leads should intentionally use each person's pronoun, that would be the campers, shared with the group in front of other people. In other words, my interpretation, if a student says, pardon me, coach or counselor, whatever they're called, would you please use this particular pronoun for me, then that counselor is to use that pronoun in front of the group moving forward. That's how I interpret that particular bullet point. I don't interpret it as the counselors are requesting it and coming down the other bullet points, that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Bullet point 7 says specifically that staff are asked not to disclose their own personal journeys in relation to any manner, dating, gender preference, LGBT, etc., substance abuse. So
And then
I can see that it's probably not well written, but I interpret it differently. So that should definitely be clarified, but that's on their organization. I appreciate you pointing that out.
Yeah, and even on that 7th bullet point at the end, it says limited exceptions apply with, as far as staff disclosing their own personal journeys, so. And I agree with you on that, the second bullet point, that the interpretation could mean that, hey, the student just volunteered this information. However, in practice, I think, I can see where the camp counselors may have, you know, taken a different interpretation on that.
And they took a very liberal interpretation to be able to open up something that they shouldn't have opened up. I would agree with you, if, assuming that they use that bullet point to support their position, right? So I thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, it needs to be, that might be a suggestion out of our investigation, they would perhaps they want to clarify their own bullet point. Because I know that we're gonna have that conversation with them tonight, so we might as well let them know, the concern that's brought up. Thank you again. Moving on now to item 8A, which is the student discipline matter. So it is recommended that the governing board approve the recommendations of the administrative hearing panel in the matter of student 2022/2023 AH07. Do I have a motion?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Motion by Karen, second by Joe. Please vote. Matter passes 4-0. Coming now to student discipline matter 0H. It's recommended that the governing board approve the recommendations of the administrative hearing panel in the matter of student 2022/2023 AH08. Do we have a motion? Motion by Joe.
Second.
Second by Anthony. Please vote. Matter passes 4-0. We now move to the consent agenda. We have a consent agenda 9A through E. Do we have a motion on the consent?
Motion to adopt?
Motion from Karen. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Anthony. Please vote. Consent passes 4-0. Moving down to the action items, that's 10A. 10A, it's recommended that the governing board approve travel and conference as presented. We have a motion on this matter.
Motion to adopt?
Motion from Karen. Do we have a second? Second from Joe.
I have one comment on this.
Yes, I was open to discussion.
Okay, sorry to jump ahead there. This is for the National School Board Association Conference. I know the California School Board Association, along with many other state school board associations, cut ties with the National School Board Association after they sent a letter to the Department of Justice asking them to investigate parents under the Patriot Act for potential acts of domestic terrorism. So, I know, David, I brought this up with you yesterday. I prefer this district cut ties with this group as well.
Deeply appreciate your comments, Anthony. Anybody else? With that, we'll please vote. The matter passes 3-1. Moving on to elimination of certain classified positions, this is 10B. We do have a speaker card on 10B. Christine, are you available?
Of course. She's got the new hair.
I think it's on. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Chris.
I don't have to talk then, okay.
Just, we'll
Convenient.
we'll
All
internally
right.
figure it out.
It's about the Jumpstart. So positions are being eliminated for Jumpstart. I know that Blossom Valley has had a robust Jumpstart program. And I just wanted to say how much we love Ms. Kim and Ms. Leslie and all the people that have worked with them, and Blossom Valley especially will greatly miss having our little toddlers there, and really the foundations that these individuals were, and this program was able to give our students. You can really tell the kids who are able to experience Jumpstart. You see the love, you see kids come back and hug Miss Kim and hug Miss Leslie and look forward. I know every morning I see Miss Kim, and my kids don't even have Miss Kim, and my kids love Miss Kim. They just absolutely adore her, and they adore the program. And I just wanted, I know it's not a retirement, you know, so usually there's not a lot of things said for cutting positions, but we just really, really love them, and there's gonna be a hole missing from Blossom Valley with the loss of Jumpstart, and the parents who are really looking forward to it next year are very sad to see it go. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. The board, the voting item is it recommended that the governing board adopt a resolution to eliminate certain classified positions. We received updates and information from Michelle, so thank you for that, Michelle. We'll ask for the motion first. Do we have a motion on this item?
All motion.
Motion by Joe, second.
Second.
Second by Karen. Any additional discussion or questions to staff?
Karen, I'm sorry, Michelle, could you please, explain about the process of the elimination?
Sure. How many minutes do I have?
Time. So each year, the district goes through a process in which we identify the positions that we're going to need for the following year. And yes, Chrissy, your sentiments are.
Is your mic on?
It should be, it's
It's
green.
not.
Right, let me try this one.
How's this one? This one?
Perfect.
Perfect. So Chrissy, thank you, your sentiments are appreciated. So we identified the positions that we're going to need for the following school year, and to speak specifically to the Jumpstart program. Because of the age eligibility requirements have changed, so students are now eligible for earlier for preschool and or for TK. And so the students will continue to be a part of our programs, but we need not only the physical space, the students that qualify for Jumpstart are gonna be in these other programs. So certainly any staff who may be affected will be working where you're working directly with, because yes, we value all of our staff members and we look for many different ways to maintain their work here and in whatever capacity we possibly can in Cajon Valley. So once we identify those positions, we then work, and some of those positions come up because the school site is changing. Either one, their funding has been changing, their demographics and the student needs have changed. And so they're just identifying really what the work is going to be in front of them for the following for the following school year. Once those positions are then identified, we negotiate the impacts and effects with CSCA, and they take the parts that are what's the word I'm gonna use? The impacts and effects, and specifically what is relevant to CSCA vote to a vote. And then we identify the next steps for the individual person who may be involved by that. Oftentimes what we do is we reassign people to different school sites where they can use those services. But we need to eliminate those positions off of the district books, because otherwise we have to make sure that we have funding in our accounts in order to pay for those positions. So when in fact they're sitting vacant because we don't have a need for them, we're not necessarily using the funding where the actual need is. So at any point in time, if that position is identified as a need, we add the position back in. And it's a pretty cyclical, evolving process that happens throughout the school year. What's interesting, that's changed recently, there's Assembly Bill 438 that now makes the notice for employees for any type of elimination or reduction, depending on the funding source, commensurate with that of the certificated staff, and we refer to that as a March 15th notice. So the district is required, again, depending on the funding source, to notify staff on or before March 15th of our plans for the following school year. And certainly that's to ensure those folks plenty of notice for us either to find them another assignment here in the district and or for them to seek alternative employment. So it's this ongoing cycle of identifying district needs, identifying the funding source to fund those positions, and then implementing that for the following school year.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. With that, we'll call for the vote. Please vote. Matter passes 4-0. Moving on, 10C. It is recommended that the governing board adopt a resolution to reduce certain classified positions effective 60 days from the date of the notice. Do we have a motion on this matter?
Motion.
Motion from Joe, second.
Second.
Second from Karen. Again, thanking Michelle for her work on this item. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote, please. Matter passes 4-0. 10D, approve and ratify consulting agreements.
May I please pull 5, item 5 underneath, please?
Item 5, we will then vote, if motion, absent item 5. So, it's recommended that the governing board approve and ratify the consultants listed. We are removing 5 from the initial vote and the initial motion. Do I have a motion on this item less subsection 5?
Motion.
Motion from Joe.
Second.
Second from Anthony. We will then vote, and then we will vote separately and discuss the other items separately. Please vote. And the matter passes 4-0. We will now go into 5. We'll do a verbal, but first, the item's been pulled. We'll open it to discussion. Joe, you pulled the item, what would you like to say?
So certainly, positive prevention plus is, again, our sex health curriculum education that we provide for, our district, in that we only have 2 curriculums that we can choose from the state of California that are actually, endorsed. So it's always been my privy to always, not vote for positive prevention plus, based on the fact that, as most of you know, my career is a wraparound to this issue, and also, that I think Cajon Valley can do better.
Recognizing the can do better process, but also recognizing that we only have 2 options forced on us by the folks up in Sacramento. Do you know of an alternative at this time, or ideas on an alternative? I know you want to go to training.
I do wanna go to training, and the other thing too is I know that Karen Minshew has been very generous in trying to, pick the most, what we call white bread, sex ed curriculum. I also do know that Positive Prevention Plus is also, endorsed by the Southern Baptist Conference. But unfortunately, that's not quite good enough for me yet, so, it's close.
Anthony, do you have a comment?
Are you inclined to vote no? Do you want to table this?
I'm always for a table, to further discuss, but, if it were to come up, I've unanimously voted no every time it's come up, either as an agenda item for curriculum or training,
Well, the issue, of course, is timing, and I'll ask staff, the line item gives us a timeline of March, April of 2023. Karen, can you address that?
Between training and communications district-wide, site-wise, informing parents of their option to participate or not participate, the timeline on this item is sensitive. If it's tabled or pushed, that would push us into April and May, and spring break, trying to train about 25 teachers over 4 days of training. It would be challenging to get that done. This is the first year we are bringing this curriculum back since COVID. And if we cannot train teachers, we cannot provide the curriculum.
When is our next, board meeting? We're down board member,
14th.
so, the 14th of March.
It would cause us, if we tabled it, it would, put us in a situation where we would have to cancel another set of trainings. April could stay depending on the board vote, and we would have to cancel our March trainings.
What does that cost?
I don't know right now what the cost is for cancellation. I'm only thinking.
And with regard to the fact that we do have a mandate from the state to provide a curriculum, is there a particular timeline on that mandate other than what we have currently on our screen here?
The timeline is just prior to the end of the year?
Prior to the end of the year.
Prior to the end of the year, so before June?
Correct, before students leave.
And with, go ahead, no, please go ahead.
So would this be a limited, or could we limit this just for this year if it were a timeline issue and we are back to the drawing board to create something internally?
I'm not sure I understand what limit means.
Like, just finish this year off with this curriculum and then go into the next, options?
Yes, every year we could, there's somewhat of an investment in, once you do training, you, as a teacher, receive your binder of curriculum, we purchase the student workbooks that go with the curriculum, so there's somewhat of an investment in the materials themselves, but a different choice could be made each and every year.
Do we have any current, employees that are currently trained?
We have, I believe, we had some last summer that started.
any updates or revisions on the training?
There are new, pieces, there are new lessons in the curriculum, so the training has changed, somewhat. Things have been added to the curriculum than, we previously used when we adopted the curriculum years ago, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago. So there are changes, it is part of the training, it's part of the pieces we're gonna really wanna inform our families about, so they can make the best choice for their student.
Any additional questions from the board?
Can we make a motion to table this until the next board meeting?
You can, yes.
I'll motion to table till the next board meeting.
So motion to table from Anthony, and the basis, if I heard previously, was, or was it from Joe, that because Juliana's not here, we wanna make a full board decision? Okay, that's Joe's consideration. We have a second to table now. Joe, second matter, so it'll be a verbal vote to table item 10 sub D sub 5 until the next board meeting to bring it back to the board. So verbal vote, all in favor, say aye. Aye. 4-0. Next item goes to 10E. Recommended that the governing board approve repayment agreement with the World of Work Foundation for expenses incurred for World of Work Conference in March of 2023. Let's do the motion first and we'll have discussion. Do I have a motion? Motion from Joe, second?
Second.
Second from Karen, discussion.
I'll go?
Sure.
Okay. The repayment of advance funds, number 3. No interest shall accrue on the advance funds. The foundation agrees that it shall repay the advance funds from the net proceeds from the conference within 60 days after conclusion of the conference. The net proceeds question, and I thank you, Scott and David, for taking the time yesterday. That's a change from the first agreement, and as I understand it, there are some funds being received, and the foundation is actually starting to pay for some speakers out of those funds received. So is that the reason for the change to the net proceeds there?
Yeah, I think the idea was, the comment made by the board, which trustee it was, but as money comes in, start paying the district back. It seems counterproductive if we have expenses still coming in, and I, have the funds still to pay it, then I'm asking the district for more money to help pay for the funds. So the idea was, as expenses come in, and as cash is now available in the foundation, we would pay invoices, hopefully not having to ask the district for money. And at the end, within 60 days following the conference, we'd be able to pay back, all the money that is lent to the foundation with this conference on. That's the net proceeds. And then it does explain there further, if for some reason, there's a shortfall on the funding, that the board can take action to forgive that, or we can come to some agreement, another 60 days at least, to come to an agreement on a payment schedule to pay that balance back. But I know we also have some updates, our superintendent has as far as fundraising so far, as far as sponsorships and donations to support the expenses. I think we made good progress on that up to this point.
And I was involved in the, not the redraft itself, but the review of the redraft. And it made a lot of sense to me when we had the discussions with staff and council as to, we don't want money going back and forth, we want money coming back, right? So the idea of net to ensure that vendors and services are paid for out of the gross made sense before it came back to us. Once it comes back to us, then at that point we have the option to determine continue repayment, figure it out, or if we have to, we alleviate the debt. That's section 4. So to me, contractually, I think it got cleaned up. That was my biggest concern when we were here 2 weeks ago, was, and you brought it up as my concept, it needs to be repaid, can't be a lingering issue. We have to put a deadline on it. At that point, it becomes up to us as to whether we want to extend, forgive, whatever we want to do. But at that point, it's on the board's decision, not the contract's decision. That's why I think it empowers us to do those things.
Totally accountable.
Right. Accountability, there's the word.
The, advanced funds addendum, am I reading, is that correct, 303,000 for audiovisual costs?
That's correct.
Okay.
As I tried to footnote there, the board has not approved any kind of payment to those. So as of today, there's no request from the foundation to pay for those. But I wanted to put a note there since it had before as a potential expense that I should ask the district to pay for. But as of today, there is no obligation for the foundation to borrow the funds. District.
Okay.
If that's clear, is
Is this an obligation that the foundation is, like we're what, less than 30 days out, so is there going to be a $303,000 estimated bill for audiovisual costs?
that's my understanding today from the
Okay.
staff. Some of that will be going to the hotel as requirement of the hotel to use their facilities, and some will be out to other contractors. That's the estimated cost. I think there's some negotiating going on, some of the breakout rooms, to hopefully bring that cost down a little bit.
Plan to have a detailed breakdown and conversation at the World of Work workshop. But what Scott's describing is we have several breakout sessions that will take place in other rooms outside the main conference ballroom. And what we're trying to do now is consolidate our sessions to use fewer rooms. And by using fewer rooms, it's fewer AV setups to reduce the cost. So it's 300 is an estimate, but we're trying to reduce that estimate by consolidating our program.
Okay.
But we'll go into detail with that at the workshop.
At the last meeting, trustee Mejia asked for a budget. Is this the budgetary document? Does this cover all the costs that we know of, or are there other speaker fees that are paid by the foundation?
This pretty much covers all the cost that we know of.
So the speaker that was paid by the foundation, which of the people on here was that?
We need a speaker.
I think, sorry, you mentioned yesterday, I think you guys received some funds from, people purchasing tickets, and then I thought you said a speaker was paid.
Nothing's been paid yet.
Okay.
We received the initial funds around $12,000 for January's registrations, and then I just got a note, it's about 48,000 we got for February's registrations from people coming from outside the state or paying registration fees. Also got about $120,000 of scholarships, I'll call them, where we can invite people in the county, other districts, board members to attend. And so that would provide up to about 130 to attend.
So we have 130 potential there that are provisioned for, we'll say. And then how many paid, registrants do we have at this point?
330.
330 plus 130, so about 460 potential with what's already been pledged.
We're still hustling, we still have 3 weeks. So all the help we can get from all of you to invite your friends and your fellow board members, please.
And I know, from doing conferences, usually in San Diego, everybody's last minute.
So would we as a board expect the audiovisual costs to be on the next agenda?
In the workshop.
Yeah, we need to have those in place, so that's what we're doing now is finalizing the program, putting the sessions into the rooms that they'll be speaking in, making sure that we can accommodate everything with the least amount of space.
Got it.
And cost.
So I went and researched, last night how loans to nonprofit organizations work and how collateral is dealt with. And two things I saw that I would like to see in this agreement. One, cash collateral where an actual bank account for the foundation is listed. And grants receivable collateral. And I know we discussed yesterday that certain grants may prohibit you from just like paying off a debt with that grant. You know, it has to go to a scholarship to send someone to the conference, for example. I would like to see a grants receivable collateral in here though for any grants that may not have that prohibition.
Just one other update, Scott, would you share the action the foundation took in terms of member?
Foundation took action today. We had a vacant director position open with a chief innovation officer no longer employed with us. And so board took action to have that replaced with a board of trustees position. So we'll bring back an item, I think, next board meeting where you guys can give direction to if you to join the foundation.
All right.
It's a conflict
Thank
of
you.
interest.
With those questions and discussions had, please vote. The matter passes 3-1. I will note that Anthony's question or suggestion about linking an account, that's something that I think we can easily do. I would think the contract would have an addendum to it. So I would encourage that just to, I'm assuming that's why Anthony voted no, but that is an assumption. But at least that would clarify that particular contractual issue. Thank you.
Thank you, President Miller.
No problem. That doesn't hurt, so do it. Moving on, we have communications. And we do have a moment of silence for two of our employees, one former employee. Dr. Candy Marr. Candy served as principal at Magnolia and Chase before retiring as the Director of Curriculum in the Education Services Department in 2008. She was part of the Cajon Valley family for 37 years. We have no information about her memorial services at this time. Next, Mr. Don Rhodes. Don was a beloved science teacher at Cajon Valley Middle School and Emerald Middle School. Don created a love for science at Cajon Valley for 21 years and coached sports programs and the EDP program. He'll be greatly missed by his students and colleagues. Celebration of life will take place on Sunday, March 5th at Cajon Valley Middle School. I will also add that Donnie was a good friend of mine, former teammate of mine at Walhalla High School for 4 years, football team, and was most recently back at Walhalla coaching at Walhalla this past season. So, received the news of his passing. I just talked to him in this boardroom maybe a month ago, 6 weeks ago. Very, very tragic. So for both of them, please, a moment of silence. Thank you. Michelle, retirements?
I'm super happy to report we have none this evening.
Wonderful. Retention. Next, we go to public participation. Folks, for those of you who have not participated in our public participation before, this is the general outline. You'll have a few moments to speak to us. I'm going to line you up 1, 2, and 3. So if the first person will please sit at the desk. The next person called, stand behind them. The next person called, stand behind them. And then we'll do it again for the next group. So, Mr. David Burton, Dave, if you'll please take the desk. Mohammed, if you'll please stand behind him as the second speaker this evening.
Do you want somebody to?
And then Kevin Miller, if you'll please be the third speaker behind Mohammed. And Steve, I don't know if you want to stand, but you're the fourth speaker and you'll be the final speaker of the evening.
I'm David Burton. I'm here representing East County Citizens Oversight, and I'm basically going to keep this simple. I want to thank all of you here tonight for doing your jobs. The board for representing the citizens out here who have the foremost oversight of everything that goes on out here. You're all elected to represent us, and you guys have got the responsibility of overseeing the staff. So I want to thank everybody for that, and that will be it for tonight.
Thank you. Mohammed, once we reset.
Good evening, board members. My name is Mohammed Tuama, parent of two students here at the district, and I live in Cajon. For 10 years, I was a good partner for the school district, and we did a lot of programs, especially a few years ago, not recently. And before it was easy to communicate with this district, it was easy to meet with Ms. Hayes or Ms. Minshew, just talk to them. We have this need in the community, and they come to us. And we did a lot of successful things. And my dream for the school district is to have a meaningful community engagement, especially for the Middle Eastern community and the Valley Florida. So that was my goal, that was my dream. I did a lot for free, and we were not funded by the district, but we were doing everything for free to help my children, my community. That was the goal of the community engagement. We supported the district. Then what happened is the FACE program came in, something that we call the FAKE program. It's not real. That became a wall between us and the district. Since the FACE program created, we cannot communicate with any school staff. Then there are some staff members with directions. They change every story we talk to the school staff and change it to something bad. And there are direction from the superintendent not to communicate with the community anymore, especially us, the real community members. So what we're doing right now, we're taking community engagement out of the school district. We need that. I came before and I talked to you. I said, please, we need community engagement. It's not working. The thing is that none of you listen. And I said, please, my phone number here, contact me. You didn't take it seriously. We're taking it now. What's going on now with the district, especially when David Yoshiro controlled, he started using the district as, like he's managing the district as a business. It's not a school district. He's using it as a business. And the thing is that you as board members, you're elected by everyone who comes here and complains. They love you, they don't hate you. But I believe you're misled by me, Yoshiro, to hate the community, not to listen to them. And I know that you are good people, and you would like to listen, and you care about everything. But you're misled by David and his attorney. What you can do, please seek legal counsel and see how can you fire Yoshiro. Please fire Yoshiro and come back to the community that loves you. I know that in your heart, you know what's going on here is not right. So please seek legal counsel and fire him before he quit. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Miller, you saw the previous two speakers, there'll be a clock that comes up, once it hits 3, feel
It's counting down right now. I've been doing this for going on a third decade, just serving in the community, serving with a lot of you. And I want to say thank you. Especially for doing your job, like the first speaker said, but secondly, El Cajon is really unique. I work with a lot of people and accomplish things who think very differently than I do on subjects that are very, very important to me. But because we can set those aside and just go do good work, we accomplish some amazing things. And I want to encourage you in that as well. I know it's hard. I work in a school district. We have over 700 students at Foothills Christian Unified. And I had to be the interim superintendent. Yeah, it's horrible. It's not fun. Your jobs are hard. But particularly with something that came up recently, I was the day chair for the education day for the East County Chamber of Commerce. I don't know why they picked me. I felt that was a very poor selection, but I enjoyed it and worked with some really good people that were much better than me. And especially Karen and Joe put together a tour of your school district that was extraordinary to see behind the curtain the teachers that are working so hard and students to be proud of. It's just something very, very good. And you've accomplished good work. And I just want to let you know that we're praying for you, care about how hard it is what you do, and just encourage you to, whenever you find you've got some walls up or something's difficult, then compromise where you can and move forward, and we're in it together, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
I'm happy to tell you I can't take credit for that organization. It was all
Good evening, trustees and cabinet members. My name is Steve Devon. I'm the president and CEO of East County Schools Federal Credit Union. And I'm here today to provide support for the homeless and foster care students and families of the Cajon Valley Union School District. East County Schools Federal Credit Union was the winner of a sweepstakes from one of our preferred partners. Winnings from the sweepstakes are to be directed to causes of our choosing. Due to the structure of our charter to exclusively serve school employees and their family members, our community donations are restricted to the needs of our East County school employees and the districts they serve. However, these winnings fall outside of those restrictions, and we felt strongly about donating to causes that help families most in need. We feel compassionate towards the needs of some of the families in this district, and have seen firsthand the multitude of ways that you support your families in need. I've spoken to Scott Bucksbaum and Ryan Satterfield about how best to distribute the donation. Simply stated, we want these funds to be provided to your neediest of families at your discretion. Therefore, please accept this donation of $1,000 for your community partner, East County Schools Federal Credit Union. Thank you very much.
More speakers like that.
Yeah. That wraps up the public participation portion of the show. Do the EDA, please. Okay. DSEA, Mark. No, thank you, Mark. Home Valley Administrators Association.
Sarah's not here.
And I heard there's no PTA, but there's no PTA representative.
But PTO is always happy to speak when we're invited.
Our next item then is to discuss future agenda items. Does anybody have a conceptual future agenda item? Nope. Board reports. Joe, would you like to go first?
Okay, let me go first. Thank you, President Miller. I just want to welcome all of the community that came in today to support the efforts of the work of Cajon Valley. As many of you know, it's been quite arduous and difficult over the last few months. What we're looking at is we're looking at a changing of the guards, and we're trying to understand how to best govern, how to work as a team, and move forward. And perhaps I failed to welcome Anthony, as I should have, in the way that I appreciate working with you, Anthony, and I thank you for the discussions that we've had privately, and I look forward to continuing working with you. A lot of good things have happened since our last board meeting, and many of you were involved in the good things that happened. And I want to say thank you to all of you, to all of those who are passionate about our children. Our children that go to all different schools, and our children that are the least of these. The children that came who had no language that matched ours, the children who couldn't read, who barely had clothes to walk in, shoes to walk in or clothes to wear. And quite frankly, when I think about those kids, those are my priorities. So thank you, Steve, for being mindful of these students.
Karen, would you like to go?
I just wanna say thank you to all our staff, to our community for showing up, for challenging us, but, you know, we want to do what's best for our students overall, and so I'm grateful to serve. And I'm still on the verge of tears. Thank you, Kevin, for what you've said, and Steve for your heartfelt, David as well. I'm honored to be a part of this, and, we wanna do what's best for our kids, for their futures, and, so, thank you.
Anthony.
All right. You You guys are a tough act to follow. That was very heartfelt, both of you. Thank you, Joe, and I'm looking forward to being a member of this team and becoming a better member of this team as time goes on. So board report, okay. I went to Crest today with Mr. John Heredia and looked at the stormwater issues there. John has a plan. It's about $500,000 plan. So I called Joel Anderson's office and spoke with them, and I'm gonna try to sell them on helping us help them with their county road stormwater issues there, because our school site has the area for the stormwater to run down into Forester Creek, but we're gonna need their help and hopefully some of their funding to do that. The situation that's been there has worked probably for 30 or 40 years, but time and running water tend to wear things down. So while we were there, I saw one of the mentees of John's, who Principal Winter talked about this the last board meeting. He was out there, and then they were gonna go over to Rios and look at some things. So real life experience there, learning how to maintain school sites. I thought that was pretty neat. And John told me some of the stories of some of the people he's mentored over time. And my father-in-law and father are both in construction, and I saw in John what I see in them when they describe the younger folks who they've brought up and showed the ropes in the trades. I saw that pride sort of beaming out of him when he was telling that story. So the stories of all the people he mentored over the years. So very cool. One thing, and I talked with President Miller about this on our agendas, if we're gonna have report from staff, and maybe we could just make a note on that. And then on the January 31st rather, special meeting agenda, the report from Mike Serban, the PowerPoint report, it appeared to have been added to the agenda, which I appreciate for the public to see. But if we're adding it after the meeting, maybe a note that this was added on such and such date. Thank you, Superintendent. That's it, thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. No, it was a good discussion. And we've had the discussion before with regard to presentations by staff. If we can get them ahead of time, that's awesome. But recognizing that sometimes those presentations, just like my own, are a few minutes before we gotta throw them out there. But yeah, when we do add them back officially onto the report, if we could just make a note, added 2 days later, added whatever the date was, because it is good for the public to be able to see what we saw when we then ended up making a decision, or if there's information on something, what information did we actually have. It just helps assist, the whole transparency concept. So, a couple of things. One, I am very happy to report that we, since COVID, had my first educational summit back in full force. For those of you that don't know what that is, when I was first elected, we're assigned schools. We're assigned one middle school and then the elementary schools that feed into that middle school. And I established that I would meet in a more casual environment in the school site, a more casual environment in the district office here with our administrators, the assistant vice principals and the principals of those schools, so we could collaborate. Whether that be at a restaurant or whatnot, have people relax, not wearing the suit, have a little bit of food, have a drink, relax, and then collaborate. What do the school sites need? How do we vertically integrate 5th grade to 6th grade, 6th grade to 5th grade? Out of the very first one that I had came the idea of 5th grade teachers spending a day in the life of a 6th grade teacher and going to middle school. And then conversely, the 6th grade teachers going and spending a day and shadowing the 5th grade teachers. Why is that? Single subject credential versus multi-subject credential. Some middle school teachers have never taught elementary and vice versa. So send them off for 5th grade and they don't really know necessarily what their students are walking into. So that was one of the great things that came from those early meetings, and I just had our new one. So I have the Rancho San Diego area schools. Great turnout. Facilities were one of the hot topics. Bathrooms, as might imagine. Along with substitute teachers, long-term and short-term, salaries and other issues. So just a very great collaborative session, just under 2 hours. And it could have probably gone longer, but we had to get kicked out, so there you have it. But very proud to be able to put that back into play, and I would encourage the other board members to host such an event with your own principals and assistant VPs, so that, again, it gets them in a more casual environment, and you can really have some good conversation, and you get to know your folks, and they get to know you a little bit better. And ultimately, it comes down to people. Right? We have to know our people. Most of you know that I like to do this day in history, and I will pull something important from American history and discuss it during my board topic. But I'm going to shift that just slightly. It is this day in history. But for those of you that have Facebook, so the young ones, no, it's not TikTok, it's Facebook. My history came up. What happened a year ago? A year ago, we were talking about mask mandates still. You can think about that. And our district and our board was doing literally everything we could before Sacramento came crashing down on us to push back about the mask mandates.
Very good.
LCC was a hotbed of issues, especially with the PE curriculum and the PE coaches, and they felt compelled to follow a certain, what the state had handed down, and we had a really good discussion. We went out there, we had those discussions, and we got our kids generally speaking out of masks, especially when they're outdoor and doing things. And those are things that we did as a board, and we took to be honest with you, were they gonna pull our funding because of masks? That was a threat, but it was a threat that I wasn't overly concerned with as an individual board member. Our board in total stood behind our community on that. I'm more concerned with them pulling funding if we don't do a mandated sex ed curriculum. So we gotta figure out how to get that done and make it right for our students in our community, because one size does not fit all, most definitely in those types of curriculums. And I applaud Joe and Anthony today, actually, for coming on board and working on those issues, because we all work on them, but each of us has to take our own lane. And Joe is the right person for that particular job from our board, and Anthony supporting her and taking a look into it is really very much appreciated. So that's the day in history on that one. Also, I want to revisit, and I hope that this is the last time I do have to revisit this issue, is the community somewhat misinformation and then righteous outrage over a completely optically inappropriate passage of a first contract on the alphabet soup issue. All right, that's Tamara Otero, who was formerly the president of this board, and her consultancy agreement. But I want to make sure that we're clear on a few things so the timeline is clear. Because there is misinformation out there. Speaking of TikTok, I saw one about me that's completely wrong, but so be it. So here we go. The certification of the election took place on December 8th. Our board bylaws, frankly, are not up to speed, and they're going to be corrected as to how we then implement the new membership versus the old membership, and who doesn't or does hold elected office at that point in time. On December 9th, there was an agenda setting meeting, which was run by the president, because we run the agenda settings, and myself as the vice president at the time. That was random because we are on a rotation. At the time of the agenda setting, there was no consultancy agreement to review from Alphabet Soup LLC, which I had no idea who was in charge of that anyways at that point in time. And the board has already discussed that. To Karen Minshew's very deep credit, I again thank you. She acknowledged that she had a staff member out, who's out getting her education, hopefully to become a teacher. But she had to have a backup handle the consultancy agreements through her department. That consultancy agreement was not added until Friday the 10th, so not seen at the time of the agenda setting by either myself nor Ms. Otero. Fast forward, we vote on the 13th, we ratify it. Fast forward that, Trustee Carnavale, Anthony, finds out who the owner of it is. I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not happy. Not that I'm not happy with Tamara. To be quite frank with you, and I'll restate this, she's exceptionally qualified to do the job that she was at that time hired to do. But I'm not happy with the optics on that. We're a public agency. We're responsible to you, as David said. So, took some time, consulted with legal. So that's what we have to do. It's called qualified immunity if you go outside of our roles as a trustee. Consulted with Anthony. Talked to Karen. Karen had a great idea to pull a workshop on these issues in our board policies. We brought in our legal counsel to go through the issue. Following that, we had a special meeting. The crux of everything that was presented to the board was there a technical mistake? Technically, no. Optically, 1,000% yes. What do we do to fix it? Don't tell me we have a problem if we can't fix it. That's the idea behind having a problem, right? Well, there's a cure and correct provision in the code for local boards. Cure, correct. The suggestion was, and I actually made the motion myself, to avoid the contract that was ratified on December 13th. Get rid of it. It's void by law, and upon how you look at the technicality of how the reading of the code goes. So let's just get rid of it. That motion passed. And then after the 3 hours or so that we were here, where we had pretty much the most vetted consultancy agreement I've ever had on this board, from Mike Servin's presentation to my questions of Michelle Hayes, two very specific questions that I had that rendered my decision on my vote. And I don't know about anybody else because it's just my vote. One, I asked Mike Servin specifically, is there anybody else in your department or outside of your department that you know that can immediately step in and do this job and do this role? His answer was no. Okay. The next question I had was for Michelle. Michelle, and she's our assistant superintendent of personnel, for those of you that don't know. What is the cost to hire somebody as an employee to walk into that role that the consultancy agreement would cover, inclusive of benefits? Because keep in mind, if you hire an employee versus a consultant, now you're paying their benefits. That estimate was $180,000 or so.
It's a lot for classified.
Right. The consultancy agreement, which had been redone and revetted with more detail for the board to take into consideration, was an up to amount at $70 an hour. Maximum that could be paid out if every single hour was billed and invoiced within 6 months was $54,000 and change. And that's a lot of money. Same point in time, we have a $250 million budget when you look at all factors. So, my thought process, we have a qualified person that I'm told that the department that needs her doesn't have somebody else as an alternative. Next, it saves the district $120,000 versus hiring somebody outside and making them an employee, of which that would be an ongoing position. So it's $120,000 in 1 year savings. After that, that employee receives benefits and salary moving forward in that position potentially. So I look at things, is it good for students? And I believe it was. 2, is it good for staff? And I believe it was. Staff member told me that they needed them. 3, is it legal? Because if it's not legal, 1 and 2 don't matter. I had a lawyer tell us it was legal on the cure and correct provisions. 4, is it fiscally conservative? Does it make sense? Is it a good use of public funds and I'm told it saves $120,000. Folks, it checked all the objective boxes, taking the subjective aspect of it being Tamara Otero away. So, we can agree to disagree that the vote should have gone as it did, but I think it's important for us to understand the actual timeline and facts as to what happened, and to understand, at least from my perspective, why I voted the way I did. I don't appreciate the harassing and threatening anonymous texts afterwards that we received. The ridiculous social media broadcasts on TikTok with me showing up in my on back over the line pictures. If you've never been there, it's a different story. You gotta lighten yourself up when you go out there. And of course, I do play competitively in that particular sport. We've been in the top 8 in the last 2 years. But we do wear funny uniforms, and some are not meant for elementary school age children. But that's 21, isn't 21 enough of that? So look, optics are bad. Should not have happened. Nobody questions that. But then we had the most well-vetted consultancy agreement that I've been a part of in the last 6 years, and the vote adopted it. We now need to move forward. So with that, Dr. Murashiro, your report, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Earlier we had a moment of silence. Thank you for that. Yesterday was a heavy day across the district. To say that Don Rhodes was beloved is a massive understatement. But I want to draw attention to Principal Goodrich, our counseling team, and several CVMS staff that came in over the weekend to make preparations so that Monday would be as normal as Monday as possible and that support systems were in place. Not just for students, but for staff, because we all know when we lose someone close to us, it's hard to just go on. And so the love and support that we saw, not just at CVMS, but across the whole district, because Emerald staff are everywhere, was really something to be proud of. And when you see staff, please acknowledge just the love and care that they give. We also want to thank Trustee Carnevale for coming in yesterday and spending time with each of us, Michelle, Karen, and Scott, on our agenda items to take time to help us be prepared and be as effective as possible. We really appreciate that. And I'm just going to share some conversations. I was at Bostonia High School at a principal's meeting, and I was walking to my car, and somebody says, "Sir, can I talk to you?" And I stopped, and it was Aurelie, our day custodian at ANZA. She was picking up her daughter as a student. She said, "I want to talk to you about composting." And so she wants to start a composting program to help kids sort their trash and create bins and use compost for the garden. So I said, "I'll come out to ANZA and see you." And then earlier in the week, I had a parent from Hammershaw call and say, "I'd like to speak to the superintendent." I had a call, she said, "I have a concern about a certain circumstance which I'm not going to share." So I'll be out there this week. And then thirdly, Sarah Robinson called and said, "The superintendent from Greenfield and Chula Vista are coming to bring a team. Would you come?" So I took some photos that I'd like to share about what I saw when I was just responding to some questions, ideas, and an excited principal who's leading incredible work at Bagnelli Elementary School. But first, I got this picture from Graham Mitchell, our city manager. These are our interns starting their first day at Public Works.
Wow.
Well, I'm going to read it. "The city is collaborating with the Illinois School District World of Work program, which incorporates workforce development into education for students for all grade levels. Our fleet division welcomed 2 new interns, Sebastian and Christopher. On their first day, PD brought over a vehicle to allow the students to turn on the lights and sirens. This was hands down the best part of their day. Thank you, PD and Fleet, for supporting our future workforce." And this is Graham Mitchell's internal letter to the Public Works Department. And I'll share with you, at ANZA, I got to see some incredible classrooms, but the highlight of my visit was visiting our child nutrition team, because on a rainy day, what's better than corn dogs and mac and cheese? Mini corn dogs and mac and cheese. At Magnolia, Sarah invited us out to come see what was happening, and she was showcasing kindergarten well-being, the science of reading, literacy rotations, and student interviews around camp. So here's our rock star principal, Sarah, talking to school leaders from across the state of California. And this is Morgan teaching one of our social emotional well-being lessons about compliment corner. And the cutest one was Me Too, where kids got to say what they liked or didn't like, and the kids that said Me Too, and they came in the middle if they agreed or disagreed. building relationships. Alyssa was the first year teacher when I started, and now watching her talk about the science of reading and integration into curriculum is just incredible. Kendra's talking about blended learning. And this is an piece of art from Magnolia that's on display at the El Cajon Police Department. They made a police car out of rolled paper. And this is part of the weekly collaboration where we bring in and rotate artwork in the police department. This is from Hamish Elementary School, Principal Colleen. I was there investigating a concern that said, let's visit some classrooms while I'm out there. And we saw incredible integration of the world of work, early literacy lessons in kindergarten, and an art lesson that's provided by the PTA. And these incredible student profiles integrating RIASEC, their hopes and dreams, strengths and interests based on the world of work curriculum, helping kids build a vocational identity. I also saw wind turbines in 3rd grade, robot building, and I'm going to share this one preview picture of my last visit before I close. So this is a preview. That's Mohammed and Frida with Mark and Jen, who's dressed as a hot dog. But there's a backstory to this that I'd like to share, and it starts with family and community engagement.
And community engagement celebration. We had parents and students from all schools from Cajon Valley District. I believe it was a great opportunity because we had parents who have worked with us throughout the year, parents who were involved in our workshops, in our parent meeting, and other meetings that we had done throughout the year. It was such a great opportunity for parents to meet, to get engaged with other parents, and to see their students' achievement.
When we come together, we bond as a community. It helps me be engaged, involved. It's very important. Without them having this, we wouldn't be able to see each other, know each other, or how to get involved. So this is very important for the community. Many cultures, one community is what my school district fights for, and it really engages all our different cultures. It empowers you as a parent to have a voice. It makes me want to continue to be an advocate, not just for my child, but for all the children within my school district. When the school and the district and the parents, let's work together. Can I like support my son and I see my son like a mom? That's why I think that the school and the district is important, and I want all the parents to come to the school.
First of all, in Cajon Valley District, they are really caring about each individual. So they are making kind of like everything easier for people and for the community to feel that they have a voice inside the district. The most important part is your kid, and when you are engaging, your kid will feel that you care about them and you care about what they are doing at the school. To be honest, the most important part for any immigrant, as soon as they are entering the United States, to get engaged in their kids' school, because it's the door for the entire community. For myself, since we came in the end of 2015, I get engaged in Magnolia Elementary School, which was the first school that my kids were like enrolled in, and I'm there until today, and I can't leave them because I don't know, I feel myself that Magnolia is like my second home. I have to be there.
Someone support me or me, I support someone. Someone support me, I feel comfortable, and I think I can go for successful person. And now me, my feeling, I wish if I can, I do my best to send back what they give to me. When they support me, I want to support another family and another friend.
A special thank you goes to all of our families who makes Cajon Valley the best place to live, work, play, and raise a family. True student success is only possible with you.
I'm going to ask Scott to share what these pictures describe. His staff led this important effort.
I think that this came from the community, actually. We're actually listening to our community and bringing it back, but there's a request for halal type options in our food service program. And initially here, it was a long process to get these procured. I think the COVID's still going on and all that, but I think going forward, we'll have a much better, time frame turnaround. But this is our first school in Cajon Valley, providing samples, so you saw like a Costco type samples for the kids. They had equivalent of, I think, around 300 hot dogs for kids to sample, and we all sampled them. And then if the kids liked it, they can go actually get their first time having the lunch program serving that. Or in Montgomery this Friday, if anyone wants to come out and check out the second serving, and then we'll regroup and kind of come back and say, what's next? We had, our parents are already there, and the employees asking, can we do it elementary? So obviously we have got enough product now to start introducing some elementary schools. And then hopefully we can go from there. It's hot dogs now, but there's chicken and other products we can provide. Just gives our students a better choice at lunch. Cultures with that is important.
We sat right in the middle of middle school lunch at Cajon Valley Middle School. So who's in for Montgomery? We'll buy you a hot dog. And then finally, World of Work Conference in 3 weeks out. These are the list of sponsors thus far. We've raised $271,000 and plus the 330 current enrollees. But we have 3 weeks to hustle. And again, every person counts. So please reach out to your fellow board members, administrators that you know from other school districts, and invite. We have the means.
Thank you, David. With that, we will adjourn the meeting at 7:09.